Why do we love villains so much?
Oof.
Villainy is fun.
Many people have said that Hero's only as good as his rogues gallery, her rogues gallery.
Villains provide this perfect foil to our heroes.
If it's too easy, we get bored. We want the protagonist, our hero, to have a worthy nemesis.
The key with a great villain is, one, you can't write a villain like they're a villain. Villains should feel that they are the heroes of their own story.
Lex Luthor,
Darkseid,
Doomsday,
Lobo,
Catwoman.
I really love what's been done with Poison Ivy. She's become this much more filled out character where you can kind of see, in a way, why she would do the things she does.
At the heart of what she's doing, she's just trying to save the earth, that's it. She's just doing, you know, obviously really wild things to do it.
The blood of those flowers are on his hands.
You have to remember that for the villain, the hero is the antagonist. So I love creating villains whose dastardly plans actually make a strange kind of sense. It's just that their methods for enacting them are perhaps a little extreme. I'll give you an example.
Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor, my favorite cake stealer.
Lex is a perfect example of a villain that was created to be the perfect foil for Superman.
He really does believe himself to be the hero of the story.
Villains driven by their own obsessions and like their own personal pride are really interesting.
These are characters that are so focused on their agenda that from their point of view, they think whatever they're doing is right.
Superman's this alien from another planet. We don't know his intentions. We don't know where he came from. We don't know what plans he has for us.
A villain's goal largely should make sense to that villain.
He really does think he's a good guy, and I really kind of like exploring that perspective, because once you do, you see how everything he does makes a little bit of sense, at least in his mind.
And so there's something that's kind of appealing about that, because we're seeing people that are consumed by their ideology, consumed by a mission, and whether they're acting on the side of good or evil, they are driven characters, and I think people respond positively to those type of characters.
So even if you're cheering for Superman to do the right thing, I don't think it's very easy to dismiss some of the validity of Lex's arguments.
The other key with creating a villain is I like to think about, where is my hero at this point in time? What lessons and trials do I want to put that hero through? And then I try to think of a villain that best embodies those trials.
I do a little bit of analysis, so I look at the other villains that might exist in, Superman's rogues gallery or Batman's rogues gallery.
Superman's so powerful that you have to get some creative ways to fight him, which is where someone like Brainiac comes in.
He brings that balance to Superman's rogues gallery, because, half of it is like, oh, these big, buff forces of nature that he has to literally, punch. And then you have people like Brainiac, people who he can't readily, vaporize. He has to be very smart and strategic about how he takes them down.
He's dangerous as heck.
But at the same time, it's not just a clash of powers, but a clash of sort of personalities and ideology.
Catwoman is my favorite.
She's so smart, she's so competent, and she's always one step ahead of Batman.
I just really like the very unpredictable nature of Catwoman.
She does whatever she thinks is right in the moment, and that might make her villainous sometimes, but she has her own moral compass.
She's truly one of my favorite wild cards in the universe.
The cat and mouse games with Batman is obviously one of the things that keeps it going.
It's a really interesting way to take a very powerful character and render them inert. This way, what you're doing is creating a story organically, as opposed to just saying we're going to use villain X and then trying to figure out a story that fits with that villain.
There's about 85 years of publishing history. There are tens of thousands of characters, and you want whatever you create, whatever you bring into this world to stand out. Usually there's one element, whether it's the white face with the huge red smile, or the big question mark, or the backwards S, that really defines a villain in a very simple, artistic, graphical way.
Well, Joker's great.
Jack Nicholson as the Joker, that creepy smile, oh my God.
You can't beat that smile. Jack Nicholson's entire face was made to play the Joker.
Even when he takes off his makeup, it's still plaster on his face.
I don't know if it's art, but I like it.
It's like nightmare fuel.
It's not always their powers. A lot of times it can just be their silhouettes or their gestures. Clayface, from an artistic point of view, he's a big hulking figure.
I remember the first time I saw Clayface in comics, I had to go to my dad and ask, like, what is this monster?
Certainly within Batman's rogues gallery, where most of the silhouettes are fairly normal looking, he stands out. And so that's kind of fun to draw.
It's such a great character design.
You want to find that shorthand. What is it that defines this villain from a visual standpoint? So that even if you were to change out his pants and his cape, you would still recognize him as that villain.
And I think that's why villains are so compelling to us.
You get to exercise your darker impulses without actually doing it yourself.
I think we often kind of play with this notion of, well, what if I went bad? What if I were a villain?
We like to see this other view of the world, this view that's a little more competitive and alternative.
I always like the villains more.